Well, it's good afternoon, just gone over midday, and we are here for a session hosted by Michael McKay from Rocket Software. The actual presentation is called Embrace and Innovate with Hybrid Cloud. And hopefully, Michael's going to sort of enhance our knowledge. But before we start, a couple of things. This session is being recorded, so if you object to it being recorded, then please, you're going to have to leave now. Then Michael has also kindly offered to get the foils to me afterwards, and they'll be available on sorry, I'm just also admitting people at the moment, that they will be available on the agenda. So the other thing is we actively encourage questions and participation. So if you can put it on the chat, then I will notify Michael and let him know. But please do ask questions or comments as well. So I'm now going to hand it over to Michael. It's all yours.
Great, thank you, Jeff. So hi everyone, nice to meet you. I am Michael McKay. I'm a sales engineer at Rocket Software. A bit of background on myself. I worked previously as a storage administrator and sysprog at a bank in the UK for about 7 years, and only recently joined Rocket Software in the last kind of about 8 months. So today we're going to be talking about hybrid cloud. We're going to talk about, what is hybrid cloud? What are some of the market trends? And then how can your organization adopt a hybrid cloud approach to kind of modernize your mainframe infrastructure? So yeah, feel free to put anything in the chat if you got any questions. Otherwise, I'll just kind of keep going and yeah, we can kind of chat at the end as well. So so as I say, our agenda. So what is hybrid cloud? The hybrid cloud market, defining and optimizing your strategies, and then challenges a hybrid cloud approach can solve. So what is hybrid cloud? So we have a pretty picture here. I'm just going to kind of talk through some points about hybrid cloud. But let's kind of begin with defining hybrid cloud. So, what is it and how is it different than kind of standard old school infrastructure management architectures? And why is it important that enterprises adopt this sort of approach, both technically and financially? So, so hybrid cloud architects all the sources of computing capacity and data storage in a way that enables workloads to shift from one place to another with less effort than maybe your older architectures. A hybrid approach is kind of a mix of on-premises traditional storage tech stacks, your private cloud, and then your public cloud. And so using all this together, workloads and data can be moved between them as per the need of your business. And this will kind of give you better options for cost containment and the need for control of your data. So this kind of addresses the problem of clumsy kind of mixed technology infrastructures have on enterprises. In my previous organization, you go into your website and you've got tons of boxes for a bunch of different storage, and capacity is kind of all over the place, and everything is a big mess. And storage administration, even when it comes to kind of costing, is just a total nightmare. Lots of it's administrative work to kind of calculate how much you're paying every year, and it's kind of a bit of a nightmare. So hybrid cloud, right? So hybrid cloud, when it's well implemented, can provide you a means of efficient movement of data and workloads from one locus of processing to another at greatly reduced costs. So it's kind of the best of both worlds. But it has to be introduced, in an efficient manner, right? It has to be introduced in a way that gives you a clear amount of data, because of course it is potentially another way to make your systems more complex if you're not very clear on your hybrid kind of strategy approach. So, so when talking about cost advantages specifically, if you don't really recognize the fact that you can get cost advantages via hybrid cloud approach, and you act on it, you're going to end up paying higher unit costs for computing and storage than your competitors, right? So that kind of puts you behind. So many enterprises are now recognizing that your mainframe, for example, is one of the best platforms, even to this day, at scaling large volumes of complex transactions, with low latency response times and high availability, right? It's a secure platform. Everyone knows this. We're happy with our data on the mainframe. But, at the same time, a hybrid cloud architecture must embrace the mainframe and vice versa. The mainframe must embrace a hybrid cloud architecture, or you risk failing to meet all the needs of an enterprise seeking to adopt it. So I kind of capture the kind of cost statement here. I'd capture it as a hybrid cloud platform model is preferred because it preserves control and oversight over your IT infrastructure, so you can see where all your data is, but it allows you to, and also it allows you to shift your costs from CapEx to OpEx, right? So capacity to operational expenses. So this is like consumption-based pricing. And what that does for technology leaders is it allows you to reduce, as I said before, hardware administration, maintenance, support, administrative jobs, etc. So let's move on. So let's talk about kind of the market, where we're at just now with hybrid cloud, and then we can talk about some implementation strategy. So here we've got a stat from researchandmarkets.com, and basically what we're seeing here is that the global hybrid cloud market has reached a value of $85 billion in 2021, stats from last year. And looking forward, the publisher expects the market to reach 262.4 billion by 2027, so in 5 years, showing an annual compound annual growth rate of 20%. So, I mean, this is very clearly a booming market. People's heads are turning towards hybrid cloud, and I will demonstrate that with a bit more kind of market trends in a second here. So when talking about specifically storage with hybrid cloud, you can see that 60% of IO leaders will implement hybrid cloud storage use cases by 2025. This stat is from Gartner. Gartner does a lot of good work with kind of trend analysis, specifically on hybrid cloud. And yeah, I mean, these use cases, especially in a kind of legacy system infrastructure, is really increasing at a rapid rate. So a little bit more about storage growth. So we have a quote here on the left from Gartner from their strategic roadmap for storage published in 2022. And the quote here is basically saying that advanced storage technologies, along with hybrid cloud IT managed services platform, are the foundation for data center modernization and enhanced IT operations. So IO, or infrastructure and operational leaders, must implement intelligent data services infrastructure powered by software-defined storage and hybrid cloud IT operations. So let's look at some stats. Let's look at some predictions, and let's kind of talk to these points and kind of draw some conclusions based on the information we're given here. So, as I say, so this is from a Gartner survey. The first stat here, as you can see, by 2025, 40% of all enterprises will require storage products to have integrated ransomware defense mechanisms, up from 10% last year. So to this point, a lot of organizations have concerns about ransomware, along with, the mass adoption of public cloud and multi-cloud, and, that introduces complexities with backup and data management, in a hybrid kind of world, right? So this forces your leaders to re-architect their backup infrastructure and explore alternative solutions. This is kind of a key motivational point to plan and adopt a better hybrid cloud approach, right? So you have your pressures of security concerns, you have your pressures with a complicated backup infrastructure. All the more important to really plan and implement a proper hybrid cloud approach to simplify where your data is and also make sure that the data is secured. So second stat here, by 2026, large enterprises will triple their unstructured data capacity stored as file or object storage on premises, at the edge, or in public cloud compared to last year. So, I can demonstrate a lot of different points here, but I want to tackle this specific stat from a cost perspective. And basically what I'm saying here is that I know leaders are realizing the price for cloud storage, if utilized properly, remember that, can save them money compared to more expensive, high maintenance on-premises storage. And due to your high volumes of data growth, cost cutting is of course now in the front and center of minds of organizational leaders. So we'll talk about this more later in the presentation, but think of your traditional mainframe infrastructure. It's fairly standard, practice to put your mainframe data backed up on tape, for example. You might have that on a physical tape. More than likely, you have it on virtual tape. And these systems take power and cooling, as well as, of course, the price of maintenance, administration, and the price of the tapes or the discs as well. And that all adds up to a pretty significant amount of money. And of course, leaders around the world are realizing you shove that off the cloud, you can actually make savings of, I have a stat later on by Gartner, but up to even 50%. So cost cutting is really it's really something that a lot of people are starting to look at that now, specifically with tapes, but also with other types of data. So staying on the costing point here, we have our third stat. More than 70% of corporate enterprise grade storage capacity will be deployed as consumption-based offerings by 2025, which is an increase of from less than 40% in 2021. So a lot of people use a CapEx procurement method, capital expenditure. And the problem with this, as I kind of previously mentioned, is it's labor intensive. It's a labor intensive budgeting process, which is really becoming a lot less favorable in a lot of organizations. And so organizations are switching to consumption-based storage as a service delivery model. So what this does is it can align lifetime asset costs with usage value. And the kind of benefits of this is it makes the process easier, reduces administrative time to analyze data consumption individually, allowing freed up resources for higher productivity, as well as providing you a scalable platform. So just to say here, if you have all your data on cloud, it's all basically tracked for you. So you just have to sign off that, on the amount of money you're spending every year. And you don't have to worry about any sort of administrative tasks here to price any of your storage. Of course, you're not going to store all in cloud, but you get the point. Okay, final stat. So by 2025, more than 40% of on-premises IT storage administration, support, and maintenance activities will be replaced with storage as a service AI ops from less than 10% last year. So we all know, AI is coming. You look at Chat GPT, everyone's talking about, the past few months. It's really, AI is really coming into the forefront of people's minds. It's getting kind of scarily good, I would say. And these top organizations in the world are taking advantage of these AI systems. And as the stat predicts, maintenance and support activities will be completely replaced through AI ops capabilities. So I guess what is AI ops? Just for those, if anyone has any questions about that. AI ops provide a framework and set of tools to offload, say, mundane resource management tasks. So AI, you might say, okay, you're talking about AI. How does this relate to hybrid cloud, right? Well, we are finding that there's a lot of organizations out there that are using specifically data on the public cloud for AI and machine learning, building their models, and then using that to gather business intelligence, make key business decisions through information learned from AI. So there's no roadblocks now stopping legacy systems like your mainframe from using a cloud-based approach. And there's nothing to say that you can't put some of your data, of course, if you want, on a public cloud and start training these AI models to help you make decisions. So it's definitely an option there. I understand a lot of people are a bit concerned with mainframe data on public cloud. It's an option for your organization. Maybe there's certain data that you would be happy doing that for. Um, but yeah, I mean, the key point is, AI is obviously growing, and is certainly something that top key performing, best performing organizations are taking advantage of. So, okay. We have one more survey, and then we're going to talk about the strategy. So just to kind of hit the points home, this was a survey conducted by an industry leading expert. You can see the base below each of the stats, and we'll just kind of rattle through these. So the first survey question was asked to 1,616 business and professional technology professionals in organizations with over 500 employees. And the question was asked to them, what priority will each of the following technologies or actions be for your IT organization over the next 12 months? To which 87% said they'll pursue a hybrid cloud strategy with either moderate to critical priority, right? So certainly in the forefront in people's minds. Another survey question asked 3,500 infrastructure decision makers who are adopting cloud. Would you describe your cloud strategy as hybrid? So 77% said yes, and 22 said no, or I don't know. So most people are going for a hybrid cloud approach rather than purely a cloud approach. Particularly, I think hybrid cloud would work better on more legacy-based mainframe organization. Another survey question here, 13,303 purchase influencers with the past to next 12 months of specified products and services answered the question, which of the following best describes your organization's deployment of storage? To which the majority said both/hybrid, 31% said in the cloud or as a service, 28% on-prem, and 1% didn't know. So, kind of driving the point home a little bit. One last survey question here to 2,972 cloud decision makers who were assigned to the platforms or business survey track. What does your organization primarily use why does your organization primarily use hybrid strategy of multiple cloud platforms? So this right here, we can see various different benefits of hybrid cloud. The main ones are, for agility, for compliance and regulations, resilience, and then of course you've got costs, performance issues, outages, different capabilities, etc. So a big mix. There's a lot of different, of course, perks of hybrid cloud, but the top ones are pretty apparent here.
Michael, can I just make some comments? I mean,
yes,
I never formally introduced myself in your presentation. I apologize, but I work for IBM in the hardware division, and certainly a lot of the things that you're pointing out there, I'm actually seeing that with my customers, certainly at the high end with the hybrid. So it really does resonate. So some very good points. The one thing that I am very surprised with is the 33%. I expected it to be higher with compliance and regulation, because they are forced more and more to go down this sort of hybrid as well. So yeah, good call. Really enjoying the statistics. I would also like to throw it out to anybody else out there. If you want to make any comments or any questions, you have the capability of unmuting rather than typing, but if you want to type, you're more than welcome. But please, it would be great if you could make it interactive. Over to you, Michael.
Thank you. Yeah, anyone feel free to shove anything in the chat or speak up and stop me if needed. Totally happy with that. Yeah, and with compliance, it's a very good point. I think there's actually a session just now, not to turn your guys' heads and go to another session, but there's a session on compliance just now. I was actually looking to attend, but obviously I can't. But yeah, certainly something that a lot more organizations are talking about today. Especially with concerns of storing data on the cloud. How does that conflict with any compliance or regulations, especially for, say, financial organizations? So really interesting stuff. Okay, we've done the stat dump, so we can now kind of talk about your hybrid cloud strategy, define it, and then optimize it. So let's dive right in. So your hybrid cloud strategy should enable you to do several different things. You should be able to leverage and extend your current investments with cloud strategies. You should add scale and flexibility to your existing infrastructure. and you should rationalize and eliminate information bloat and mitigate compliance risks. So things we talked about just in the previous slide. We can talk a little bit about the advantages of doing said points. For example, when talking about scale and flexibility, you know, not only are you talking about, okay, reducing costs and while it's increasing scale, but flexibility could be a number of things such as disaster recovery, right? You know, there's organizations now that are actually using the cloud as a site for kind of their secondary site to store their DR image, you know? So you're now recovering, say, your services on the mainframe from the cloud instead of from a secondary site somewhere somewhere else. So organizations are now sort of adopting this sort of approach. In terms of you know, information bloat, you know, there's kind of a lot of different strategies you can do to tackle information bloat. What I've seen some organizations do is they will take a essentially cold storage, and they'll move that storage off onto the cloud and keep their kind of hot storage on-prem. So the thing with cloud storage is, sure, it's cheaper, pretty much like universally so, than on-prem storage, but you get charged based on recalling that data, right? So that's how cloud services make a lot of their money. And so you don't really want to store a bunch of data on the cloud if you have to constantly recall it and pay more money. However, if you store, for example, cold tape backup data on the cloud, then you are introducing a cost savings, and then you may only need to recover that data once in a blue moon in a DR test or a real DR scenario. And otherwise that data can just kind of expand out in the cloud, kind of out of your hair. So certainly something to consider. Okay, so pressing challenges within adopting a hybrid cloud approach. The number one pressing challenge is siloed platforms. Siloed platforms are impeding delivery of quality applications and data with speed and efficiency. So of course, your data being quote unquote locked on the mainframe slows down data access from different platforms. Number two is workload and cost optimization. As mainframe workloads increase and require prioritization with balancing and distributing across platforms. Data growth, which we just talked about there, drives up storage costs and makes it challenging to support your healthy data environment. Lots more administration, buying more disks, extra costs, etc. Space even, do you have enough space in your data center for all this data eventually? Content growth is making it challenging to modernize processes and mitigate compliance and governance concerns across systems and platforms. So kind of related to the third point there. So how do you optimize your strategy, right? We've talked about what hybrid cloud is and what challenges are pressing, but what can you actually do to start optimizing and implementing the strategy in your organization? So we have 4 points here, and I'll talk to it a bit more in the next slide, but four key kind of optimizations for your strategy are: one, to integrate mainframe and open systems. Now, this is, you know, taking your mainframe data and applications and being able to interact with cloud and digital strategies, right? So from what I've seen in some organizations, they take the mainframe guys, they put them in a box over here, and then they have all the DevOps and open systems guys all, and, you know, in big fast-paced offices doing exciting things. And, you know, you're just sitting there doing your kind of mainframe stuff on your own, kind of siloed from the rest of the organization. And some people like that, I guess, but I think it's a bit of an inefficient way of working. It creates a bit of a skills gap, even, I would say. You know, the mainframe guys learn mainframe. No one else learns mainframe, right? How do you get mainframe skills? And of course, you know, it eventually will turn organizations' heads to be like, okay, you know, well, let's just get rid of the mainframe if it's that easy, as if they expect it to be that easy, and adopt another approach so that we can get all the staff working together. But I wouldn't say that approach is necessarily the right one to make through cost efficiency or through upsetting your staff. And, you know, there's a lot of issues why through that approach. Instead, people just need to start looking at modernization of their mainframe and actually being able to integrate mainframe data with open systems. And that can be done now. There are trends in the market of people storing mainframe data on the cloud using open source tools on the mainframe and interacting with, Git, Jenkins, etc., with your mainframe data, virtualizing your mainframe data to be used by, say, SQL DBAs, for example. There's solutions to do these sort of things nowadays, and there's the kind of market's trending in that way. So by integrating your modernize and a more modern approach is very complementary with a hybrid cloud strategy. So you can leverage cloud for secondary storage and machine learning and AI. As I said previously, companies are now storing mainframe data on the public cloud for AI. Cold storage on the cloud, DR images on the cloud, lots of different things you can do there. Deploy, execute, and manage workloads across your chosen infrastructure seamlessly and transparently, right? So your mainframe data can go to the cloud. This is a modernizing approach, can be shared through different environments when it's on the cloud. It promotes collaboration between mainframe guys and the rest of the organization, essentially. And of course, centralized access to content, right? So now with the cloud, you have access to a central repository where you can write your data to, recover from, and importantly, analyze all in one location. Data analytics is getting more and more important these days. And, if you're only analyzing all your distributed information, and then you're analyzing your mainframe data separately, not only are you duplicating the task, right, but you're also which of course is wasting time, but it's incurring extra costs, and then you might not integrate those two results together. But if you can have a centralized repository with all your information, analyze it all there, AI could even learn from it there. It just makes things a whole lot simpler, right? A whole lot simpler, cheaper, etc. So in here, I talk a little bit more in depth about some of these topics that I touched on in the previous slide. Some I won't touch on too much more. When we're talking about integration, we kind of talked about that. You can maximize your potential of your organization if you're sharing data and apps, from the mainframe and from other distributed systems. I've told you about your DR process and reducing storage costs. A bit more about insights, which I didn't previously mention. A stat by Gartner I have here. Gartner projects that by 2024, which is only next year now, Jesus, 30% of business leaders will rely on AI ops for automated insights and derive business-related decisions. So in next year, 30% of businesses will actually rely on AI. Reiterating the point here, but rely on AI to make some of these incredibly, important decisions. So certainly something that a lot of organizations need to jump on. Potentially this extra insight could really create a separation between the really successful organizations and the rest. So increase agility, right? Everyone's sort of agile. It's a bit of a buzzword in recent years, but you can see the advantages of an agile framework every day in the way they work. And by deploying, executing, and managing your workloads across whatever chosen infrastructure you use seamlessly and transparently, from mainframe to cloud, you can help create a modern experience on the mainframe. The mainframe isn't a big fridge in the back of the data center now. It's just as good as anything else you've got on the market. It's all about how we bridge the gaps between the mainframe and everything else. Improved information visibility and complexity. Here are the last couple points. I'll just kind of mold them together. As I've said before, having one repository for all your information is good for analytics, but it's also good for stuff like audits. Makes audits a whole lot easier. It makes data management less taxing and easier. which in turn helps you stay in line with regulations. If you understand your data, you understand where your data is, and you understand what data you have, you're much more likely to stay in line with regulations and avoid any sort of extra costs in the future. Also, for example, say a new regulation comes out. There's a new regulation coming out, DORA. I think it came out a few weeks ago. And a lot of companies are concerned, how is this going to affect me? These new regulations come out and we have to be able to adapt. And approaches like this not only allow you to adapt quicker, but also, if you understand your data, as I say, you can very quickly make the decision, am I in line with the new regulations? Do I need to change something in order to be in line with these regulations? So, okay, right. Any questions there, or shall we talk about challenges that you can actually solve with hybrid cloud?
Michael, there's no questions in the chat, but please, anybody on, I would encourage you to ask questions or even comment, please. You can unmute yourself, by the way.
We'll give you guys a minute to think, and I'll just keep going. But if anyone wants to stop me, that's fine. So this is probably my favorite part of the presentation because it talks a little bit about real life challenges and approaches you can take to solve them in a hybrid cloud environment. So I have some examples of some kind of normal challenges you may see in an organization. So challenge one, for example, right? Integrating traditional mainframe applications into hybrid cloud workflows. So I'm sure most of you or all of you are familiar with, the 3270 green screen. A lot of people love it, of course, but certainly it's difficult to get younger people to be interested in this technology and adapt and pick it up the same way that it was a few years ago. So so some organizations use screen scraping tools, for example, to automate tasks done on a 3270 terminal screen, for example. This is quite an old school approach. And one of the constraints is it doesn't really allow like ZOS applications to function in a similar way to, say, automated tools on a distributed system, right? Which might be kind of standard practice in other technology fields. But now there's industry trends that people are using, cloud-based bots to automate tasks on the mainframe, rather than just traditional screen scrapers. And that will kind of allow you to modernize your old applications and take advantage of existing hybrid cloud workflows to then, of course, cut costs and increase automation. So number two, we're going to talk a little bit about storage. This is kind of my more area of expertise here. So some of you may be familiar, some of you may not be as familiar, but modernizing traditional secondary storage has been something that organizations have been doing for quite a few years now. Kind of a standard data center of mainframe data will consist of usually your mainframe DASD disk, which sits in a box somewhere, a number of solutions, whatever storage provider you'll use. And then most of the time people will use tape or VTL now as a backup system. So that's where you put all your mainframe backups of data. And most of the time that data sits there and doesn't get touched. I think I read a stat from Gartner, and don't quote me on this one, but it was something like 66% of data that's put on tape is never touched again after 30 days. So you just cold storage, it sits there forevermore, So, in the last kind of maybe 20 years or so, most organizations have moved off physical tape to virtual tape. Why is this? Yeah, a physical tape is can fail. It's maybe less storage than virtual tape, slower response times, whatever the case may be. It's a kind of a modern approach, right? And now organizations are starting to look at kind of the next step of that, which is potentially even getting rid of tape libraries entirely. So that's something that may or may not be achievable, and I'll talk about in the next slide. But quickly, just some some stats here. So Gartner predicts 50% of savings by moving off VTL tape to cloud solutions. So I mentioned this previously. I mean, right away, 50% savings on your tape storage is pretty insane, especially since, as I say, most of the time your data is just sitting there, cold storage, right? It's not even getting used. They're expensive to procure and maintain. Of course, you're paying for support contracts, your storage admins who are, of course, taking care of these systems. And if you want insights from secondary data, pretty hard thing to do, right? There's not a lot of tools out there. It's not a lot of analytic frameworks out there to really get information from your mainframe kind of archive data. So VTLs and tape library is not ideal for analytical workloads. Specifically, if you're looking to trend towards AI and more modern approaches, then you're not really going to be able to do much for this data. Some organizations are kind of talking about the problem of not using common secondary storage for mainframe and non-mainframe environments. So if you have a big storage box somewhere, and it might be like 30% full with open system storage, you might want to put some mainframe data in there and get rid of the VTL, and then you just have one box with all your data. You can't do that. Well, you can do that now, but traditionally you wouldn't be able to do that. So you'd have to maintain two different separate boxes, all the cooling associated, the space taken up, the administration, etc. So here is a vision for the future. This is just an example. There's plenty of other ways to do it, but this is just one way that this essentially is starting to get looked at from people in the space. So I'll go ahead and put this X right here, right? So some organizations want to just get rid of your VTL entirely. Get rid of this, tape storage, and instead put this data, this backup data. So you're going to keep your primary storage in DASD. That's, as far as I can tell you, that's kind of something you're going to have to continue doing. But your secondary storage, your backups, rather than throwing it on tape, maybe put it over here into open system storage, right? So this is solving the issue I mentioned earlier. Half this box is filled up with open system storage, the other half filled up with mainframe backup data. Then if you wanted to analyze it, it's really easy and you get multiple forms of data in here. Or for example, get rid of your VTL and put data on the cloud. Obviously cost cutting exercise, as I mentioned previously. You can drive better analytics in the cloud than you can in a VTL as well. Or perhaps, a mixture of the two, or the three even, maybe you keep your VTL, so maybe you're sitting there with a virtual tape library that's getting full and you're like, okay, well, I really don't want to buy more disks, or more tape if you're on a physical tape library. Then you have a decision to make, right? Do you pay a lot of money to get a lot more disks or tape? Or do you decide, right, what we're going to do? We're just going to take any new data coming in and a bunch of old cold storage, and we're just going to move that over to the cloud. And that frees up data in your, frees up space in your VTL to store, more kind of hot data, right? So data that's active, and then just push off the cold data into the cloud, realize those cost savings. And now you've got diverse kind of information everywhere. You can put your DR images on the cloud, etc. There's a lot of different benefits there. So there's tons of different things you can do here. But the main point I would stress here is that cost savings, right? Modernization and cost savings, and potentially getting better insights into your data. Okay. A third problem you could face could be addressed by a hybrid cloud approach to data virtualization. So you have valuable business data, which is locked in a secure transactional system, such as your mainframe. You're probably pretty happy about that, right? That's one of the reasons why people use the mainframe. It's a really secure environment. You store all your data in there. It's a big reason why we keep them around, I would say. But the problem is that there's a lot of valuable data locked in there that just can't be easily accessed by other sort of tools and platforms, and thus can't really interact with data or data in the cloud, or whatever the case may be. So this introduces challenges of data analytics and insights, of course, which we talked about before. But now we're seeing that there's companies trending towards eliminating this segregation to achieve a holistic view of their data, and also allow tons of different things to happen. So for example, if you're a cloud or a distributed engineer, you can now interact with that data through SQL, you know? So you have DB2 data on your mainframe in some table somewhere, and that's good information. And you got guys over there on the SQL side, completely removed from the mainframe space, not talking to any of the mainframe guys. They're in their own bubbles, siloed. Well, with data virtualization, you can now get SQL developers and end users to essentially get information off the mainframe. And by I say get the information, I'm not even talking about removing the information from the mainframe, but taking a read-only look at the mainframe data and then being able to interact with it, build tables, use it for whatever the case may be. So that's kind of a use case of data virtualization. A lot of different organizations are trending towards this approach. And as I say, the three main outcomes here for data virtualization are modernization, real-time analytics, and of course, optimization. And, we're talking about, we can get into a little bit, modernization could be via APIs to accelerate delivery of new web portals or mobile apps or cloud initiatives, all with the idea of increasing your business's efficiency, making a simple integration a whole lot easier, having those silos getting removed, Analytics, as I say, business insight into customer needs, buying preferences, a good operational insight into your data also, of course, reduces risk for fraud and improves data security and, of course, compliance. It helps with. And optimization, you can enable you can reduce cost and complexity of existing, say, ETL processes. If you did want to get mainframe data off the mainframe, you could virtualize it and then put it off into another box. That's potentially a solution. Or, only read-only access into the mainframe data. Keep your data on the mainframe if that's what you want, but have it interact with other tools. And that leads me into my final point, which is about open source software. So I'm sure some of you are aware that open source tools are now available on the mainframe from several different providers. These are all free to download. I must stress, you can go ahead and download these tools and shove them on your sandbox environment and have a play around with them. And these are great. The possibilities of open source tools on the mainframe are practically endless, right? You can do things from create a whole DevOps toolchain, which I've seen in the market now. People are creating their whole toolchain on open source tools, interacting with mainframe data. I actually did a presentation at GSE Northampton last year, talking specifically about open source tools. And I had a demo on that in the call there. And the demo was about showing how you can modernize your mainframe using modern tools like VS Code, which a lot of younger developers are now using, to interact with and update COBOL programs. And basically the linchpin in between VS Code and your COBOL program on the mainframe is Git. And with these tools, you can essentially, sorry, I feel like the sun's peeking in here a little bit. So with these tools, you can essentially take a COBOL program, update it on VS Code, push those changes through into Git, pull those changes from Git into your mainframe, and it reflects your mainframe data there, and vice versa. And what is the benefit of this approach? I mean, it really comes down to enabling next-gen developers and kind of supporting an overall hybrid cloud approach. Breaking down the barriers between mainframes and modern solutions and allowing people to collaborate together, store their data on the cloud that they can both access and, eliminate a bit of the skills gap that's growing in this space. So as I say, there's tons of stuff to do. That's just one example, but, this is all free to download. So you can go ahead and Google that. You go ahead and, adopt that on your mainframe if you'd wish. And that's pretty much me, 45 minutes or so. So thank you very much for attending and listening. If anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to take them. If you would rather prefer feel free to email me on the email provided here. I can get back to you as well if you'd rather not speak up now. Yeah, thanks.
So, Michael, thank you very much. And what I will say is Michael's going to forward the agenda, his foils, his presentation to me, and I'm going to get it up on the agenda. There's if you can go back to the last link, that's the feedback to the session, which I thought was very, very good. So a good session, certainly gave me some insight, and certainly on some of the survey stuff, very, very informative. So thank you for that. And then, as I started by saying that this is recorded, and the recording will be available at some point. So thank you very much. And I noticed some of the guys are putting in the chat, great session, and thank you, Michael. I don't know if you noticed. So
yeah, I can't see that, but yeah, thank you for the feedback.
yeah, so you've had some feedback already. So there we go. So I am going to bring this to a conclusion by closing out the session, because I have to close it out for the next one. I'll give it a minute in case anybody wants to go off mute and make any comments or so. Just out of interest, you'll send it as a PDF copy, or will you send it as a PowerPoint?
Whatever people prefer, I can export as a PDF if that's easier.
Okay, yeah, it uses, I think it uses less space with a PDF. So
yeah, that's what I'll do then.
If they want PowerPoint, they can come to you direct.
Great. Okay. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
Okay, I am going to bring this to a close. Thank you, everyone, for attending. But more importantly, Michael, thank you very much for an informative session. And I look forward to seeing you in the flesh at the event, hopefully in November.
Yeah, I'll be there. So I'll see you then.
All right.
Thank you all for attending. Cheers, guys.